Hello everyone and welcome to this station again, Thriving with Sickle Cell. Remember, this is my second video and I'm new to this, but I hope you're following, you're subscribing, and you're actually sharing it with your friends, your loved ones, or anybody you know anywhere in the world that is thriving with sickle cell. With that said, I'm going to go to a quick recap of what we talked about in my last video. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it, but here's what I talked about. I talked about why this video, I talked about what sickle cell is, I talked about why people need to actually thrive with sickle cell, and I talked about the possibility of living to the 80s and 90s because there are people actually living that long thriving with sickle cell. Now, I'm just going to be sharing a few tips with you today on this video on thriving with sickle cell. So the first thing that I want to talk about is hydration. You cannot overemphasize hydration. It's extremely important. Why do you need hydration? It helps with the flow of blood. It helps with the viscosity of the blood cells, of the blood itself. It reduces frequency of crisis when you hydrate properly. And guess what? Even if you had a crisis, after the pain management, one of the first things that a doctor does actually to ensure that you're hydrated. So for you to actually ensure that you're not actually going into the hospital, why don't you just hydrate yourself? Now, that's probably a very difficult thing, and there are many ways to do it. Number one, take a bottle with you everywhere you go. That's it. That's mine. I take it everywhere I go. This one is made by, I don't know, thermal flask. I got it from Costco, and I've had a few others. I've gone through a few of them. That's one thing I kind of never ever not buy. I always buy it. So it's very important for you to actually think about hydration. Hydration is key. You must always hydrate yourself. Now, if you're a parent that has to help a child to hydrate, right, or a younger person hydrates, there are many ways to do it. So one of the ways is to ensure that they enjoy what they're drinking. My doctor told me as I was growing up that he didn't care if I was drinking water or drinking anything at all. He just wanted me to continue to hydrate. Now, if you're older than me, think about sugar. If you're younger than me, think about sugar. If you're a kid, you're going to burn that sugar. So don't worry, drink the sugar if that's what you need to do. And one of the things that my mom did was she ensured that I had something to mix with water. At that time, it was Ribena, there's squash, there's several things you can drink with your water to make it a little sweet, so that you can drink it, and it's more palatable and it's more enjoyable. And there's also that, goal to drink as much water as possible. Now, for children, this is a very, very good methodology. As an adult, you can actually indulge a little bit, but again, think about your sugar content, your sugar level, and all the things you're eating along with drinking whatever you want to drink. If you're an adult, there's something you want to also think about: alcohol. Alcohol actually is a diuretic. Coffee is a diuretic. They dehydrate you, they take water away from your body. So if you're going to be doing any of those things, if you drink alcohol, if you're drinking coffee, if you're going to increase your sugar intake with fizzy drinks, those things are actually diuretics, and they actually make water leave your body. So you want to think about all of these things when you are thriving, or when you think that you need to thrive with sickle cell. As somebody who's thriving with sickle cell, I'll tell you that one of the things that I pay attention to is all of the things I've talked about: alcohol, sugar, coffee intake. Even though I'm still a bit guilty on the coffee. I like my coffee. I drink it in the morning. It helps me to wake up. I don't know if that's the best thing for my health, but I still, try and drink a lot of water. As a rule of thumb, the doctor said to me, 4 to 6 liters of water every day is what you need as a sickle cell patient. That's a very, very tall ask. I'm not even going to kid you because it's not easy. This bottle alone is 1.2 liters, so I try to drink about 4 of them. And by the time I've done 3, I can tell you how many times I'm going to the bathroom. But I'll take that discomfort over going to the hospital or going to the hotel, as I fondly call it, because that's what I used to go to a lot of times. So hydration is my first tip. Make sure you always hydrate a lot. Get your kids to hydrate. You as a person hydrate. However you want, your friends, ensure that they hydrate. And that is the first thing I'm going to say about thriving with sickle cell. The second thing I'm going to talk about here is nutrition. What you eat and who you are, how your body functions are extremely crucial. Eat those vegetables, drink those fruits. Take those fruits however you want to, or drink those fruits, eat the vegetables. Think about it however you want it. Just make sure you get the nutrition right. Fish is very good for you. Fish oils, fatty fish, all of that stuff, very good for you. Chicken, meat, turkey, eggs. Make sure you get all those things into your diet as quickly as possible. If you live, or if you come from a country where I come from, like Nigeria, that's where I'm from, I can assure you that most of the things that we eat are high in carbohydrate. They eventually convert to sugar, right? So it's not really good for you to, stick to only those diets. So try your very best possible to eat as much vegetables as possible. Sometimes you can convert those vegetables to drinks, right? So you can juice them. So one of the things I've done is I usually mix carrots with apples and juice them and drink it, right? Because that helps me to drink a whole bulk. I also think about eating them by themselves as much as possible. I've also tried cucumber and celery, very, very good for you as well. So various things that you can do, various iterations of nutrition that you can think about. So you can make juices, you can actually cook, wholesome meals that are well balanced, morning, afternoon, night. Eat your vegetables again, eat the fish, get the fish oils in your body system. Make sure that your nutrition is very, very good, because that's one way that your body naturally fights, infections. That's when your body naturally builds immunity. So ensure that is at the top of your list when you're thinking about thriving with sickle cell. The next one I'm going to be talking about is, we said one is nutrition. Number one is hydration. Number two is nutrition. Number three is rest. That's one thing that I am still guilty of, because as you get older, you think that the day is flying away from you. Doctors recommend 6 to 8 hours of sleep. The way I think about it is a third of my life. That's very hard for me, right? Because as I get older, I'm trying to be more productive, do as much more with my time. But then I get these arguments where I hear that you can even be more productive with that 1/3 of your life asleep, which is 8 hours or 6 hours, just a little under 1/3 of your life, right? So give it a shot. After giving it a shot, actually myself, and that's one of the things that I think I'm going to thrive with sickle cell. Make sure you get that rest time. It's very important. Stress is it's everywhere around us, so you have to rest. Getting your rest actually is the way your body actually naturally heals itself, naturally refreshes itself, and make sure that you're functioning at optimal capacity. As a sickle cell patient, you must get that rest. You should get that rest. Now, as a parent dealing with sickle cell children, you have to ensure that you get your kids to rest. Early to bed, early to rise, is very important. They say the early bird gets the fattest worm. So many things that they say. So go to bed early for you to get the right amount of sleep. Get up early, sharp and alert, and, being strategic about your day. Help your kids to go to bed early. My own bedtime used to be 8:30. I don't remember what time I woke up, but I know I got too much sleep. The next thing I'm going to be talking about when I talk about rest is stress. Stress levels are very, very correlated. They're very intertwined with sickle cell crisis. So you have to manage that stress. Stress comes from various areas. So you have your physical stress, you have your emotional stress, you have your mental stress. All of those things are things that you have to manage as a sickle cell patient. You have to think about your environment, who is in your environment, how you're allowing people to interfere with your thought process and all of that stuff. It's extremely important. You have to manage your mental well-being. It's also very crucial, because that's what we did do today. Now, your mental space is probably the most important thing, because that's the part where you tell yourself every day you have to get up and you have to do the things that you need to do to be the best person. The day you stop fighting, the day your brain starts telling you can't do this anymore, most likely you're not going to do it again, right? So you have to keep that mental space very, very well guarded and in the right place all the time. Now, your physical stress is the part that I'm going to talk about, and that's the part that people don't really pay attention to as much as possible. So I used to live very far away from work, and I used to drive somewhere between 40 and 45 minutes to go to work. All of this was including traffic. Sometimes when there was so much traffic, it would take me about an hour and a half. I left home at 5:30 a.m. I get to the office at 6:30. I sleep inside the car till 7 o'clock. And at 7 o'clock, I get out and go to the office. I stay at work till maybe 9:30, 10, because I'm waiting for the traffic to get away. Guess what? That was very bad for my health. At this point in time, I can assure you that I was visiting the hospital in quote, every 3 months. I was in the hospital. I couldn't really escape it. And stress was actually the real cause of all of these things. Of course, there are other things that are actually around that trigger all of that. But of course, when I started managing stress, there was a lot of reduction in the frequency that I was going to the hospital. One of the ways I did it was I moved closer to work. So it's non-negotiable. As a sickle cell patient, try and manage that commute, reduce that commute, reduce the stress. Find a way to do it. Follow somebody, hitchhike. You don't have to do all the driving yourself. If you can afford someone to drive you, depending on where you live, go ahead and get someone to drive you. If you have a partner that can drive, go ahead and get her or him to drive you wherever you need to go, because that actually helps you in managing that stress level. And guess what? You live longer for yourself, you live longer for your loved ones, your friends, and your buddies. If you are talking about children, or when we're talking about children, their own stress level comes from other things. Preparing for exams. Work hard long before. Prepare for those exams before it's time for the exams. That's one of the things I did, knowing fully well that if I got into the exam mode and I'm trying to do things like every other person, it wasn't going to work. Those parties, you can actually ignore them. You don't have to go for all of them. You can go for a few for sure, because one of the things I advocate is leave, right? There are things you can control, there are things you cannot control. So you have to actually leave, irrespective of whether or not you have sickle cell. So leaving is a big deal, right? So in leaving, you have to do things that other people do. However, you have to be thoughtful and mindful of the fact that you are sickle cell. Your body doesn't allow you to do some things the way every other person does it. So you have to do it with style, Think about it. So I go out a lot of times by 11:30, I'm out, I'm coming back home. I'm coming to sleep, I'm having a good night's rest, right? So we've talked about rest and we're talking about stress right now. So that's one way I've managed it. Another way to manage it for kids is time out. You have to give them time out. So they can go out, they can hang out with their friends, but they get a few minutes of time out, encourage them with something, tell them if they take their time out, they're going to do something for them. Have that conversation with them around why they need to take the time out. I remember as a kid, my mom told me that I couldn't enroll in karate classes because of my health, and that was something that hurt me. But I began to see why. I couldn't also play lawn tennis because of my health, right? So several issues around managing stress, communicating with kids, and helping them to understand why some of these things are important, right? In today's world, children are really smart. So I recommend that you tell them early, help them understand the whys. Don't just say don't do it. Help them see how it benefits them, and I bet you they're going to be mostly compliant. And of course, sometimes when they are actually compliant and they're able to show you that they are compliant, do reward them, because of course, any kid you reward is going to actually repeat that behavior that they were rewarded for, right? So my recommendation to you, if you're a parent, is consider finding a way to ensure that your child takes time out when you are there and when you're not there. And when you're there, especially, help them to actually manage that stress that they might actually be dealing with. Right. So I've talked about a few things right now, and I'm going to talk about a few other things. So if you cannot get all your vitamins in, consider actually taking multivitamins. Talk to your doctor before you take it. Me personally, I take my multivitamins individually. I don't take one tablet that has everything. I just take maybe vitamin C here, fish oil, omega-3 stuff here, vitamin D here, and all of that. I take those things because I might know that I don't eat enough of them. I can't get all of them in my nutrition. And I actually use that to help me manage, all the things that I think my body needs and needs to get. Before you take any single capsule, consider talking to your doctor. I recall that when I was younger, my doctor said to me, avoid multivitamins that contain iron. That's because my body naturally produced iron, and he said he was concerned that I could, get into a situation of iron overload. Now, that's not something that any sickle cell patient wants to deal with, because it could lead to stroke, it could lead to all kinds of complications, right? So avoid, just using any kind of tablet. Don't do things because other people are asking you to do it. Just make sure you consult a doctor, consult a medical professional before you use some things. For your children, of course, I think you and your doctor are actually working together to make sure your kid's health is very well aligned. I assure you that my mom was my second doctor, not because she was a doctor, but because she was able to understand all the things that the doctor was saying, was able to convey them to me, and I was also able to imbibe some of those things and replicate them in my life. So I'm saying, how do you thrive with sickle cell? These are some of the areas in which you need to manage to thrive with sickle cell. So I'm going to talk about something else before we go away. I'm going to talk about managing our environment. So one thing that I know has occurred many times as I thrive with sickle cell is infections. Now, I never ever know where the infections come from, but there's some things that I can do, which is make sure that my food is hygienically prepared, my environment is hygienic, I'm cleaning my home, wherever I put my things, wash your hands regularly when you go out and you come back in, wash your hands before you touch anything. All those simple things that we learned during COVID are things that you have to imbibe as a lifestyle living with sickle cell. Those things are extremely important because you don't know where infections come from. Personally, I don't, and the least I can do is to keep a very environmentally friendly home or neighborhood or whatever you want to call it, wherever you live, by being hygienic, being clean up after myself, and making sure that I'm not exposing myself. Now, one other thing is, if you live in an area where cold is a problem, you have to think about warmth. It's important for you to keep yourself warm as a sickle cell patient. Basically, maintain your regular body temperature. It doesn't have to be hot, but maintain your regular body temperature, one that is comfortable for you. And why do you need to do this? Because extreme weather doesn't actually do good for sickle cell patients. I live in Canada right now, but I used to live in Nigeria at some point in my life. I also used to live in Illinois at some point in my life. So I've lived in 3 cold regions. Right now I live in Winnipeg. It's also very cold, and I can assure you that all of them required a type of strategy. So depending on where you live, you have to find a strategy to make sure that your body temperature is regulated. Sickle cell patients don't do well in extreme change or weather situations where the weather is changing frequently from left to right or right to left. For example, spring is the worst season of the year for me. Why? Because it goes up and it comes down. How do I manage those kind of things? When I'm in cold regions, what do? I literally wear layers at times when I'm not confident about what the weather is going to look like, especially in the spring. Cold in the morning or hot in the morning, hot in the day, the sun goes away and it's super cold, right? So that's something that I actually ensure that I manage by wearing more than one layer and plan like as if it's kind of going to be cold. If I am now hot, I take off one layer. That's one thing I recommend that you do as a sickle cell patient. Normally, the next thing I'm going to also consider is, if you're living in the hot areas, avoid the sun, avoid being outdoors. If it's too hot outside and you're outside, guess what you're looking for? Dehydration. Dehydration doesn't work well for sickle cell patients, and so don't be dehydrated. Again, water is it. Drink your water regularly. Drink as much of it as you can. And if you find yourself outside, find a way to go back inside in hot regions. In cold regions, don't stay out too long, and all of that stuff. Those are things that you can do to help you thrive with sickle cell. I hope that this video has been actually very insightful for you, and I hope that it has told you 1 or 2 things that you can take away and try on your own. Let me know in the comment section what you tried, what you think, and what you know. You can actually send me an email with any question that I can answer or you want me to answer by going to thrivingwithsicklecell01@gmail.com. Again, it's thrivingwithsicklecell01@gmail.com. You're gonna find that there in my headline. You can see the email there. Send me an email, ask me questions, and I'm gonna be addressing them as we go along. Until the next time we have a conversation, have a wonderful and beautiful week. Goodbye.